Sexton asked me to help out this afternoon. He said, if you want, buddy, you can even wear a hat. And welcome to the 9th annual Poetry and Barbecue. Look around and see the support of this community for the Laura Riding Jackson Foundation. Thank you very much. We'll be starting the special part of our program in just a few minutes, but I want to show you my electronic device. It has a cricket sound when it rings, but I've turned it down, so you're not going to hear my cricket sound. So I'm going to encourage you and invite you to take out your electronic device and turn it either off or turn it to vibrate, turn it down so that we don't interrupt or disturb what you're going to really relish and enjoy this afternoon. You have some programs that describe, in some part, describe why we're here this afternoon. We're here to support the Laura Riding Jackson Foundation. It is a 501c3 organization whose purpose is to preserve and interpret the home of the late poet and author and promote literary programs that nurture a passion for the written word. I said there were administrative things, and I'll get to you in a minute, Sean. Hold on just a second, buddy. But a special thank you also to Rusty Crowther, Sergeant at Large. And, you know, for the last few years, Sean Sexton has participated at the Cowboy Poetry Reading at Elko. And Sean thought to himself, it's not possible for all my friends to join me at Elko, so I think what I'm going to do is bring a little Elko to Vero Beach. What about that? Sean Sexton is our poet laureate. He takes very seriously his role in not just writing and presenting his poetry, but urging others to participate and to hone their craft of the written word. But I'd like to introduce my friend Sean Sexton, who's going to introduce, you won't be disappointed, you're going to be amazed at the artistry of these gentlemen who are going to share their written word, and you're just going to be amazed. It's going to be a wonderful thing. But Sean, come share with us, tell us, introduce these folks.
If I ask Robin to do something, he does it. Most of the time. It's my pleasure. I want you all to look in your programs. We're not going to eat up any more poetry time with lengthy introductions. But we've got Joel Nelson from Alpine, Texas, Andy Hedges from Lubbock, and Randy Rieman from Choteau, Montana. And I met all of them at the National Cowboy Poetry Gathering. I've listened to all of them and hand-picked them for you. And by gosh, they all agreed to come. So you guys take the stage. Enjoy.
About that. That's good. Thank all of you for being here. We're going to do a short little opening. I'd like to do the first couple of stanzas of an extremely long poem.
He's
Okay.
turning you up here.
Okay, how about that? All right. Thank you, thank you. I'm going to open this with a couple of stanzas out of a very long poem written by an Oklahoma boy who found his way to the Hawaiian Islands, became the poet laureate of Hawaii, wandered around and got to Florida, became the poet laureate of the state of Florida. His name is Don Blandy, and a lot of you probably have read his work. One of his books is titled Florida Days, which also happens to be the title of a Jimmy Buffett album for all you parrot heads. This is from Vagabond's House. When I have a house, and I someday may, I'll suit my fancy in every way. I'll fill it with things that have caught my eye, and drifting from Iceland to Molokai. It won't be correct or in period style, but oh, I've thought for a long, long while of all the crannies, all the nooks, of all the bookshelves and all the books. The great long table, the deep soft chairs, and the Chinese rug at the foot of the stairs. It's an old rug from Fort Chawan that a Chinese princess once walked on. My house will stand on the side of a hill by a broad, slow river, deep and still, with a tall lone pine on guard nearby where birds can sing and storm winds cry. The flagstone walk with lazy curves will lead to the door where a pan's head serves as a knocker there like a vibrant drum to let me know that a friend has come. And the door will creak as I swing it wide to welcome you to the cheer inside.
Well, it's a real treat to be here. My first time in Florida. Brought my family with me. My little girl is on the front row watching the show, and it's a real treat to be here with two of my heroes and dear friends. Some of you may not be familiar with cowboy poetry, but you will be by the end of the next hour. But many of you are probably familiar with some old-time cowboy songs that are kind of grow out of the same tree that cowboy poetry grows out of. The songs and the poems are closely connected to one another, and many of the old songs captured the imagination of the United States, and some of them were taught in grade school. This is one you might be familiar with, although you might not know this version. It's kind of an older traditional version of a tune that's been collected and sung by a lot of people, everyone from John Lomax to the Sons of the Pioneers. And it's kind of rooted down there in Texas where me and Joel are from. As I was out walking one morning for pleasure, spied a young cowpuncher riding along. His hat was thrown back and his spurs was a jingling, and as he approached he was singing this song. Oh, hoopty-tie-ow, get along, you little doggy. You know that Wyoming will be your new home. Well, it's driving and cursing and damning them doggies to their misfortune and none of my own. harvest early in the springtime. We round up the doggies. We mark 'em and brand 'em and bob off their tails. We round up the horses and load the chuck wagon and throw them doggies out on the long trail. Well, hoop-a-tie-yow, get along, you little doggies. You know that Wyoming will be your new home. Well, it's driving and cursing and damning them doggies to their misfortune and none of my own. Some think we go up the cow trail for pleasure, but that's where they get it most awfully wrong. If it hadn't been all the trouble they give us, I'd have no reason to sing you this song. Well, hoop-a-tie-yow, get along, you little doggies. You know that Wyoming will be your new home. Well, it's driving and cursing and damning them doggies to their misfortune and none of my own. And now you'll be soup for Uncle Sam's engine. Well, it's beef, heap beef, we hear them cry. But get along, get along, get along, you little doggies. Well, this time next week, you're gonna boil and fry. Now if I ever marry, it'll be to a widow with 14 children, not one of my own. If I ever marry, it'll be to a widow with a great big cow ranch and a 10-story home. Well, hoop-a-tie-yow, get along, you little doggies. You know that Wyoming will be your new home. Well, it's driving and cursing and damning them doggies to their misfortune and none of my own.
Come on now. Can you hear me okay? Before we go much further, I want to say how much we all appreciate Sean and Sharon and their hospitality here. Would you all put your hands together? First saw Sean at Elko a few years ago, and was immediately drawn to him. He's just, I'm sure you've all been in a situation where someone draws your attention for a reason you can't quite put your finger on at the moment, but you learn a little later that your spirits are kindred spirits. And we just want to thank Sean for taking a chance on bringing our community into your community. So thank you so much. There's no other two cowboy performers that I'd rather share a stage with than these guys, and we've shared a lot of stages and laid down a lot of horse tracks together, Joel and I. And there's an old proverb that I've always loved that says, when steel sharpens steel, like one man sharpens another. And these guys have rubbed a lot of rough edges off of me over the years, so appreciate that. I'm going to do a really traditional cowboy poem about a camp cook. I've noticed since I've been here the last few days that food plays a relatively important part in everyone's life. And it did on a roundup crew too. It's called Boomer Johnson. Mr. Boomer Johnson was getting old in spots, but you don't expect a bad man to go wrestling pans and pots. But he killed his share of fellers, and his draw was getting slow, and he give up punching cattle and commenced to punching dough. Our foreman up and hired him, thinking age had rode him tame, but a snake don't get no sweeter by the changing of his name. Still, old Boomer knowed his business. He could cook to make you smile, but I'll say he rustled fodder in a most peculiar style. He didn't use no matches, left them laying on the shelf, just some kerosene and cussing and the kindling lit itself. I'll tell you something, mister, it'd give your heart a jolt to watch him stir frijoles with the muzzle of his Colt. Now, killing folks and cooking ain't so very far apart, and I guess that's why old Boomer kept practicing his art. With the front side of that pistol, he could cut a pie lid slick, and he'd crimp her with the muzzle just to make the edges stick. And he built his donuts solid, but it sure would curl your hair to watch him plug them donuts as he tossed them in the air. Why, he bore a hole plumb center every time his pistol spoke, till the can was full of donuts and the shack was full of smoke. We all were getting nervous, but he couldn't understand why his shooting made us jumpy when his cooking was so grand, and so he kept right on performing, and it weren't no big surprise when he took to carving tombstones on the covers of his pies. It didn't taste no better. It didn't taste much worse, but sitting at his table was like riding in a hearse. You didn't do no talking, and you took just what you got, and you ate till you was foundered just to keep from getting shot. Well, at breakfast one fine morning, I was feeling mighty low, and old Boomer passed them donuts, and I tells him plenty no. Alls I take this trip is coffee, for my stomach is a wreck. Well, you could see the itch for killing swell the wattles on his neck. He picked him up some donuts, and he strung them on his gun, and he stuck it in my gizzard, and he said, "You're taking one." Now, he was set to start a graveyard, but this time he was mistook. Me not wanting any donuts, I just up and whipped the cook. Well, did they fire him? Listen, fellers, there was nothing left to fire, just a row of smiling cowboys with another cook to hire. And if he's joined some other outfit and he's cooking what I mean, well, it's where they ain't no matches and they don't need kerosene.
Forgot a little housekeeping chore a minute ago. I'm going to get that out of the way right quick. A few days ago in the mail, I received an envelope with a little bunch of CDs in it and a check for $109.20. And Andy Hedges' signature on the check and a short note that explained this is your, he recorded one of my songs. He said, "This is your royalty check for the first 1,000 copies." And I knew the CD hadn't even been released yet, so there's no possible way he could have sold 1,000 copies. So I'm going to return this check, and if you feel like you want to give it back to me after you sell out today, I'll take it back.
Sounds like a good deal.
I'm 73 years old, and I've been in love with poetry for over 65 years. And long before I knew there was such a thing as a cowboy poet. My mother read poetry to me, and I had wonderful literature teachers in high school that inspired an intense love of poetry. And I'd like to draw from some of those school days a piece that I was particularly fond of then by a great American author named Stephen Vincent Benet, titled The Ballad of William Sycamore. My father He was a mountaineer. His fist was a knotty hammer. He was quick on his feet as a running deer, and he spoke with a Yankee stammer. My mother, she was merry and brave, and so she came to her labor with a tall green fir for her doctored grave and a stream for her comforting neighbor. Some are wrapped in linen fine, some like a godling scion. I was cradled on twigs of pine at the skin of a mountain lion. Some remember a white starched lap and a ewer with silver handles. I remember a coonskin cap and the smell of bayberry candles. Cabin logs with bark still rough, and a mother who laughed at trifles, and tall, lank visitors, brown as snuff with long, straight squirrel rifles. I can hear them dance like a foggy song through the deepest one of my slumbers. Fiddles squeaking the boots along, my father calling the numbers, quick feet shaking the puncheon floor, fiddles squealing and squealing till dry herbs rattled above the door, and dust rose up to the ceiling. There are children lucky from dawn to dusk, but never a child so lucky. For I cut my teeth on money musk in the bloody ground of Kentucky. When I grew tall as the Indian corn, my father had little to lend me, but he gave me his great old powder horn and his woodsman skill to befriend me. With a leather shirt to cover my back and a red-skinned nose to unravel each forest sign, I carried my pack as far as a scout could travel, till I lost my boyhood and found my wife, a girl like a Salem clipper, a woman straight as a hunting knife with eyes as bright as the dipper. We cleared our camps where buffalo feed. Unheard of streams were our flagons, and we sowed our sons like apple seed on the trail of the western wagons. They were right tight boys, never sulky or slow, of a fruitful and goodly muster. The eldest died at the Alamo, and the youngest fell with Custer. The letter that told it burned my hand, yet we smiled and said, so be it. But I could not live when they fenced the land, for it broke my heart to see it. I saddled a red unbroken colt and rode him into the day there. He threw me down like a thunderbolt and rolled over me as I lay there. A hunter's whistle hummed in my ear as city men tried to move me, and I died in my boots like a pioneer, the whole wide sky above me. Now I lie in the heart of the fat black soil like the seed of a prairie thistle. It has washed my bones with honey and oil and picked them clean as a whistle. And my youth returns like rains of spring, and my sons like wild geese flying. And I lie and hear the meadowlark sing and have much content in my dying. Go, play with the towns you have built of blocks, those towns where you would have bound me. I sleep in my earth like a tired old fox, and my buffalo have found me.
Going to leave old Texas now. They got no use for the longhorn cow. plowed and fenced my cattle range, and the people there are all so strange. I'll take my gun and I'll take my rope and I'll hit the trail at a long, slow lope. Say adios to the Alamo, and I'll turn my face toward Mexico. I make my home on the wide, wide range. The people there, they're not so strange. The hard, hard ground will be my bed, and a saddle seat will hold my head. And when I awaken from my dreams, I'll eat my bread and my sardines. And when my time on earth is done, I'll ride the trail to the Holy One. I'll tell St. Peter when I go that a cowboy's soul ain't pure like snow, but in that far off cattle land, he sometimes acted like a man. And I'm a-going down this road feeling bad. Lord, I'm going down this road feeling bad. Lord, I'm going down this road feeling bad. And I ain't gonna be treated this way. And I'm a-going where the dust storms never blow. Lord, I'm going where the dust storms never blow. Lord, I'm going where the dust storms never blow. And I ain't gonna be treated this way. And I'm going where the water tastes like wine. I'm going where the water tastes like wine. Lord, I'm going where the water tastes like wine. And I ain't gonna be treated this way. I'm going to leave old Texas now. They got no use for the longhorn cow. They plowed and fenced my cattle range, and the people there, they're all so strange.
There's an old pard of mine that sits by his door and he watches the evening skies. He sat there 1,000 evenings before, and I reckon he will till he dies. Poor feller. I reckon he will till he dies, and he'll hear through the dim, quiet air far cattle that call and crickets that cheep, and his wife singing their baby to sleep, and the creak of her rockabye chair. Once we used to camp where the last light would fail and the east wasn't white when we'd start, but now my friend's deaf to the call of the trail and the song of the restless heart. The song of the restless heart that you hear in the wind from the dawn. He's left it with all the good free-footed things for a slow little song that a tired woman sings, and a smoke when his dry day is gone. I wrote in and told him of lands that were strange, where I drifted from glory to dread, and he'd tell me the news of his little old range and the cute things his kid had said. Poor feller. The cute things his kid had said, and the way 6-year Billy could ride, and the dark would creep in from the gray chaparral, and the woman would hum, and I'd pity my pal, for I thought of him like he had died. Well, he rides in old circles, he looks at old sights, his life is as flat as a pond. He loves the old skyline, he watches of nights, but he don't seem to care for beyond. No, he don't seem to care for beyond, nor the room he could find there for joy. Ain't you never uneasy, says I one day. He just smiled at me in a pitying way while he braided a quirt for his boy. Now he preaches that I ought to fold up my wings, that even wild geese find a nest, that women and a woman are different things. A saddle nap isn't a rest. Always more for the shade and the rest, and less for the wind and the fight. But out in strange hills when the blue shadows rise, and I'm tired from the wind and the sun in my eyes, I wonder sometimes if he's right. Oh, I courted the wind and I followed her free from the snows that the low stars have kissed to the heave and the dip of the wavy old sea. But I reckon there's something I've missed. Poor feller. I reckon there's something I've missed, and maybe it's more than I've won. Just a door that's my own when the blue shadows creep, and my wife singing our baby to sleep when I'm tired from the wind and the sun.
My very first memory is my dad holding me horseback on the saddle in front of him with his arm around me, my hands around the saddle horn. We were riding along a dirt road at the edge of a field, and my dad was pointing down, and I looked over and he was showing me how to tell a horse track from a cow track. And ever since that day, I suppose, the horse has been important in my life. The horse, according to fossil evidence, was once a little terrier-sized animal, about like Cookie, Sean and Sharon's little terrier, trotting around the face of the earth on paws with toes. By the Eocene period, well, the middle digit had evolved into what we now think of as the horse's hoof, and the digits to either side deteriorated into what we call the splint bones in the horse's leg. With all that in mind, I want to do a poem that I wrote. I was out in western Nevada back in 2002 at an event, and I had a few hours to kill in a hotel room before my show that night. And it happened to be 2002, the year of the horse. And so I wrote this, titled it Equus Tobias equus, depending on how you want to pronounce it, which is the genus and the species of the horse, as a tribute to that animal that has been so important to guys like us. I have run on middle fingernail through Eolithic morning. I have thundered down the coach road with the revolution's warning. I have carried countless errant knights who never found the grail. I have strained before the caissons. I have moved the nation's mail. I've made knights of lowly tribesmen and kings from ranks of peons. I have given pride and arrogance to riding men for eons. I have grazed among the lodges and the teepees and the yurts. I have felt the sting of driving whips, lashes, spurs, and quirts. I am roguish, I am flighty, I am inbred, I am lowly, I'm a nightmare, I am wild, I am the horse. I am gallant and exalted, I am stately, I am noble, I'm impressive, I am grand, I am the horse. I have suffered gross indignities from users and from winners, and I felt the hand of kindness from the losers and the sinners. I have given for the cruel hand and given for the kind, heaved aside Appomattox when surrender had been signed. I can be as tough as hardened steel, as fragile as a flower. I know not my endurance, and I know not my own power. I have died with heart exploding beneath the cheering in the stands, calmly stood beneath the hanging noose of vigilante bands. I have traveled under conqueror and underneath the beaten. I have never chosen sides. I am the horse. The world is but a player's stage. My roles have numbered many. Under blue or under gray, I am the horse. So I'll run on middle fingernail until the curtain closes, and I will win your triple crowns, and I will wear your roses. Toward you who took my freedom, I've no malice or remorse. I'll endure. This is my year. I am the horse.
It was my good fortune as a young teenage boy to discover poetry, and I discovered it through cowboy poetry, which was flowing out of the gathering in Elko, Nevada in the early 90s, early 1990s, and that really brought me to these old songs that I've been playing for you, and these old traditional poems that Randy has been reciting for you. And something that I'll always be grateful for is at that particular time in the state of Texas, there was a group of working cowboys writing poetry who were performing on stages around the state, these regional cowboy poetry gatherings. And I now have a painting in my office at home with some of these guys in that painting. Our good friend Gary Morton did a portrait of 5 of these gentlemen, called it Puncher Poets, and they're men who deeply influenced me. One of them is Joel Nelson, sitting here, and one is Buster McLaury, and then 3 who are no longer with us: J.B. Allen, Buck Ramsey, Larry McCorder. And if you're familiar with cowboy poetry, then you would know all those names, and they're all people, including Joel, who are considered classics of the genre. But they all had a tremendous influence on me in attitudes about life and the words that they wrote and the way they would present those words on stage. So I'd like to kind of pay tribute to those men who influenced me so deeply and recite one of the poems I picked up from Larry McWhorter, who grew up in the panhandle of Texas, not too far from where I grew up. His father was Frankie McWhorter, also a panhandle cowboy and an old-time fiddle player who played with Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys. And this is one of my favorite pieces of Larry McWhorter's to recite. I almost put my rope on her once, but then I thought it through. I'd had my day in the sun long ago, so I left her for someone like you. Sounds to me like she run you off, I said to the silver-haired man. Well, there ain't a cow brute anywhere too much for a hand worth his sand. We were talking about the old red cow, a legend round these parts. It's been said she'd put fear and dread in the punchiest cowboys' hearts. An old barren cow who'd escaped all the drives 'cause she was big, mean, and clever. Manager said she was 12 years old. The old men said she'd been there forever. Now, legends don't scare a boy of 19 who thinks he's the pride of the nation, and I'm thinking if I pin this old cow, I'll sure have a good reputation. Where do I find this renegade beast, this scarlet scourge of the prairie? I'll lead the hussy through the bunkhouse door and you'll think she was raised on a dairy. I'll bring her in and she'll bear a grin, for she'll know that she's had her licking from a hand from the faraway land where the hoot owls romance the chickens. A gleam appeared in the old man's eye and he was grinning a little too much. I'll tell you where the red cow lives, and while you're gone, I'll carve you a crutch. Oh, and give me your address before you leave. You'll want me to write your folks. Well, I left him there to amuse himself. I didn't care for his little jokes. Sabbath sun caught me riding old Gus, sneaking through the brush like a ghost, till we come to the mouth of the canyon where that outlaw had been seen the most. Come up on an old dirt tank about halfway up that draw, and standing there for her morning drink was the biggest cow I ever saw. Her horns weren't tipped and she wore no brand. Her ears were long and slick, and I thought of a big old rhinoceros I'd seen in a Tarzan flick. I knew if I showed myself to her now, back up the canyon she'd go, so I eased up high so I could drive her on down and catch her in the big flat below, and I cinched up a notch and shook out a loop, pulled my horn knot tight, then I eased old Gus to the edge of the brush and showed myself ready to fight. She jerked up her head when we come in the clear, and a startled look filled her eyes. I had to grin, for that my little ruse caught the wily red cow by surprise. She's scared and confused, with no place to hide. I've wrecked her psyche, I think. But she stood there, sized up her latest of pests, and then calmly went back to her drink. We sat there and stared at each other a while till the red cow had drunk her fill, and she stretched out her back and ever so slowly started walking towards me, up the hill. Her stride betrayed no fear at all. It's like she'd been through this before. About then I started to doubt my own smarts, and I pondered the red cow's lore. Her slow, steady walk turned into a trot, and her mouth began to foam, and the closer she got, the more that I wished that me and old Gus had stayed home. The walls of that canyon somehow looked steeper, and it looked a lot narrower, too. My perception had changed on a whole lot of things, and my brashness I started to rue. I'd made my brag back at the ranch about the worth of a man who would balk, and I found myself falling victim to my own yapping tongue's foolish talk. My moment of truth was on me now, and my smarts was fighting my pride, and that cow was locked in on me and old Gus. Then my outlook was rectified. The boss hadn't sent me out here on this wildcat venture of such. If she didn't bother him, then why should she me? Hell, one old red cow don't eat much. 50 feet between me and the cow, another thought entered my mind. There were many like me, but this cow that I faced was one of the last of her kind. Who was I to alter her fate? Her freedom she'd fought long to keep. Far be it from me to ruin her life. Oh, I could pin her, but then could I sleep? I cringed at the thought of a grinning old man and the scorn I'd see in his eye, but I knew I was right. So I tipped my hat as the famous red cow trotted by. The old man was waiting when I got in, the bunkhouse door open wide. I've got things ready for you and your cow. A stool and a pail stood inside. Well, he rode me hard and he put me up wet till he seen that my pride was full peeled. But the scorn I expected he never showed. He said, son, I know just how you feel. You ain't the first to change his mind after doubting the red cow's lore. You boys your age have dealt with her kind, but on her acoustic, you're just one more. There comes a time in every man's life when he's forced to face his limitation, and you feel like a fraud, but your judgment was sound, so son, you ain't no imitation. Oh, you talked a lot, but you took your shot, which is more than many have done. She force-fed you crow, but that taste we all know. So welcome to the humbled ranks, son. Well, the years have gone by, and I reckon she's died. I know I never saw her again. With all my heart, I hope that old girl never saw the inside of a pen. And though she's gone, her legend lives on, and I'm proud to be part of her lore, for the times have changed, and a brute of her kind is rarely seen anymore. Young sprouts now ask me about the cow. Tight-throated, I think of that day. I recall my old friend and what he told me back then, and I grin at these pups and I say, I almost put my rope on her once, but then I thought it through.
Mention that the first poem that I did about Cook was written by a fellow named Henry Herbert Nibbs, and Henry Nibbs never made a dime as a working cowboy, but he wrote hundreds of really great cowboy poems. Henry Nibbs was a violin repairman in Santa Barbara, California. The second one I did there was called The Married Man, and that was written by Charles Badger Clark, who was poet laureate of South Dakota. And that was published in a book called Sun and Saddle Leather, and the book was published in 1917. And if you want a great book of older traditional cowboy poems, you can't go wrong with Badger Clark's book, Sun and Saddle Leather. There's another kind of foundation, what we consider sort of the classic cowboy poets. There's about a half a dozen of them, and his name's Bruce Kiskadden. And he did work as a cowboy. He worked for years as a cowboy. He traveled a lot. He ended up in Australia at one point. He was all over the West, and when the Hollywood movies were becoming really popular in the 1920s, he went there. He went to Hollywood, like a lot of guys did, thinking they might get a job in the films, like Tom Mix. And he and some other fellows were in a hotel room. And they sent the bellhop out for some liquor. And when he brought it back, Bruce Kiskadden asked the fella what he got paid to be a bellhop. And when he found out how much the guy made, he went straight downstairs and got a job as a bellhop in that hotel. And he stayed there for the next 20 years, and he wrote about 600 cowboy poems that we know of. This is one of my favorites of his. An old western town lay asleep in the sun of a long summer's day that was then almost done. The shadows stretched out and the horses stood round, sort of resting one leg with their heads hanging down. Two cowpunchers down at the Last Chance Saloon was trying to sing. They were both out of tune at the end of the street that was dusty and narrow, scratching the dirt with some chickens and sparrows. Dogs slept in shade, and people, they strolled like they felt plumb content in both body and soul. If you looked just a little ways off to the west, you could see the high mountains with snow on their crests and the shadows of clouds drifting over the flats. Oh, it sure made a right pretty picture at that, till this drunken cowpuncher got ready to go, and he figured he'd ought to put on a big show. So he spurred and he hollered and shot his 6 gun, and he aimed to light out with his horse on the run. But he didn't remember his cinches was slack until after he got this old pony on track. Now this cow horse, he started to buck and to bawl. He got rid of that cowpuncher, saddle and all, and before the drunk waddy got clear of the wreck, he was bit by 2 dogs, which he didn't expect. Now this cow horse bucked into a long hitching rack where a team that was hitched to a wagon reared back, and they lit out a dragging that old rattle trap and swinging the broke ends of 2 hitching straps. A whole lot of people come from everywhere. The chickens and sparrows, they took to the air. The kids made for cover. The women all screamed, and the dogs was all chasing that runaway team. And some fool run out like some fool always did, waving and yelling and flapping his lid. But the team got too close, and the man lost his nerve. He got out of the way, but he made that team swerve, and they broke off the porch post in front of the store and busted the window and several things more. They was off on their feet when at last they got stopped, piled up in a heap with that wagon on top. They was fast in the harness. One horse nearly strangled, but the crowd went to work and they got him untangled, and right when they started to take him away, the storekeeper come out with plenty to say. See, his place had been wrecked, and what made it worse still was the man with the team owed the store man a bill. Well, he told him he'd take it right out of his hide, and he sure wasn't bluffing. He got in and tried, but most of the citizens present there reckoned the storekeeper come off a mighty poor second. Then the town marshal came with his badge and his gun just in time for a drink when the whole thing was done. And the sun soon went down, and a few golden streaks from the afterglow showed on the far distant peaks, and the kerosene lamps shed a soft yellow light where the town folk were cooking their supper that night. It was a real western night with no fog and no haze, and the stars hung in clusters so bright that they blazed. Some neighbors, they gathered for casual talk. You could hear the slow footsteps along the boardwalk. There sprung up a soft, gentle breeze from the west, one after another. The lights went to rest, and the curtain of night settled quietly down on the best of all places, an old western town.
This poem that I'm about to do is such an important piece that I've strived to share it with every audience that I've ever come in contact with. It's one of the most beautiful pieces of Western literature that I've ever run across. It was written by a fine friend of mine named Buck Ramsey from Amarillo, Texas. He was also a fine friend of Randy. Randy here, a brilliant mind. He was 30 years old, a young Texas cowboy, when a bad horse wreck put him in a wheelchair, where he spent the remaining 30 years of his life. And in the morning, I was riding out through the breaks of that long plain, and leather creaking in the quieting would sound with trod and trod again. I lived in time with horse hoof falling, I listened well and heard the calling the earth, my mother, bade to me, though I would still ride wild and free. And as I flew out on the morning, before the bird, before the dawn, I was the poet. I was the song. My heart would beat the world a warning. Those horsemen now rode all with me, and we were good, and we were free. We were not told, but ours the knowing. We were the native strangers there among the things of prairie growing. This knowing gave us more the care to let the grass keep at its growing and let the streams keep at their flowing. We knew this land could not be ours, that no one has the awful powers to claim the vast and common nesting, to own the life that gave him birth, much less to rate his mother earth, then ask her for a mother's blessing and ever live in peace with her, or dying, come to rest with her. Ah, we would ride, we would listen, and hear the message on the wind. The grass in morning dew would glisten until the sun would dry and blend the grass to ground and air to skying. We'd know by bird or insect flying, or by their mood or by their song, if time and moon were right or wrong for fitting work and rounds to weather. The critter coats and leaves of trees might flash some signal with the breeze, or wind or sun on flower or feather. We knew our way from dawn to dawn and far beyond, far beyond. It was the old ones with me riding out through the fog fall of the dawn, and they would press me to deciding if we were right or we were wrong. For time came, we were punching cattle for men who knew not spur nor saddle, who came with locusts in their purse to scatter loose upon the earth. The savage had not found this prairie till those who hired us came this way to make the grasses pay, and pay for some raw greed no wise or wary regard for grass could satisfy. The old ones wept. So did I. Do you remember? We'd come jogging to town with jingle in our jeans, and in the wild night we'd be bogging up to our hats in last month's dreams. You see, the night could barely hold us with all those spirits to embolden us. With horses waiting on 3 legs, we'd drain the night down to the dregs, and just before beyond redemption, we'd gather back to what we were. We'd had our horses for the wagon, but in the ruckus, in the whirl, we were the wolves of all the world. The grass was growing scarce for grazing, would soon turn sod or soon turn bare, and money men set to replacing the good and true in spirit there. We could not say, there was no knowing how ill the future winds were blowing. Some cowboys even shunned the ways of cowboys in the trail herd days, but where's the gift not turned for plunder? Forgot that we are what we do and not the stuff we lay claim to. I dreamed the spell that we were under. I throw in with a cowboy band and go out horseback through the land. So, mornings now, I'll go out riding through pastures of my solemn plain, and leather creaking in the quieting will sound with trot and trot again. I'll live in time with horse hoof falling. I'll listen well and hear the calling the earth my mother bids to me, though I will still ride wild and free. And as I fly out on the morning, before the bird, before the dawn, I'll be this poem. I'll be this song. My heart will beat the world a warning. Those horsemen will ride all with me, and we'll be good. And we'll be free.
This is a poem from 1924 written by a guy named S. Omer Barker from Las Vegas, New Mexico. He'd certainly be another name you'd add to those classic cowboy poets that Randy was talking about. And this is one that's haunted me for years, and I had an idea to set it to a little tune, kind of in the talking blues tradition of some of my musical heroes like Ramblin' Jack Elliott and Guy Clark. And one day this one just kind of came together. Traced in the flicker of greasewood fire, the cowboy kid saw his heart's desire. Still but a lad in a play cow camp, his ears heard the milling remuda's stamp, and he knew his heart would know no rest till he could scratch 'em along with the best. And over the shouldered mesas ride, his saddle a creak with his horse's stride. A boy dreamed the time when he could answer the range's witchery. Ruddled there by the hearth fire's flame, grizzled and old as a Salem dame, his hair is whitish as alkali. The cowboy kid sees his past go by, and he smells the sage off the mesa's rim, and the days come tumbling back to him. Days that were tinged with the smell of hair, burnt till the brand came clean and fair, and nights that were droned with the milling herd. His feeble heart within him stirred, and out of the phantom in the flame, into his soul, the old call came. Oh, a heart knows not body is old, and riding days are a tale that is told. For he would saddle and over the hill, ride to the ranges that beckoned him still, and there by the fire, as he fell asleep, the old man's pulses ceased their sweep of cowboy blood through his leather veins. A west wind called from his sagebrush plains, and off to dim ranges of mounted men, the cowboy kid rode forth again.
I got the privilege here of closing this out. I want to thank you all for the gift you've given us, the invitation to enter your community, and your attention here. 100 years ago, the great Westerner, Charles Marion Russell, the great artist and brilliant writer, wrote these words about gifts, and I'll leave them with you. He said, "A gift can't be measured by value nor pound, nor counting the coin that it cost. For a tune from a fiddle's a mighty sweet gift, but ain't long left the bow till it's lost. The ear lost the music, but the heart held the sound and corralled all the goodness it meant. For a gift from the heart, without measure nor pound, why, that don't cost the giver a cent." Now, love is a giver of gifts, and friendship's his husky mate. And it's the slices of heart that come with a gift and give every gift its weight. C.M. Russell, 1918.
Thank all of you for being here. We couldn't have done this without you.
Thunderbird and try to write a sad song. Tell me, baby, now why you've been gone so long. Tell me, baby, now why you've been gone so long. You've been gone so long. Tell me, baby, now why you've been gone so long. Oh, the scratch in my door tonight, hear that lonesome wind blow. Tell me, baby, now why you've been gone so long. Tell me, baby, now why you've been gone so long.